Hi, it's Will from StormTheCastle.com, and this is part one of my tutorial on how to sculpt your own fantasy miniatures. And what we're going to learn how to do is sculpt miniatures roughly in this scale, which is about 1 inch equals 6 feet. So they're very small miniatures, but they're very detailed. And this tutorial is going to take you through the whole process. This part one, I'm just going to describe the process, and I'm going to show you the various materials you need to have. Sculpting miniatures of that scale is difficult to do. It takes some practice and some time. So I'm not just going to give you a quick overview and show you how I do it. I'm going to actually take you through a series of steps that will help you gain the skills to make your own fantasy miniatures. And if this tutorial goes well, I may even show you how to use the miniatures you make to make molds, and then you can replicate them and make lots of copies of the same one. So let me start by giving you the process that I'm going to use in this. The very first thing you have to do, and I do this in almost all of my tutorials, especially when it's something complex, is you need to have a sketch pad and pencils, because you can't just start sculpting a miniature. You have to do some drawings of your miniature and get some ideas, and there's also some pitfalls you want to avoid, and you can avoid those in the drawing. So that's the very first step, is to do some sketches of what you think you want to make as a miniature. And that'll be the next installment of the tutorial. After that, we're going to go to children's clay like this, and we're going to make a large version of our miniature. So that way you get a sense for the 3D sculpting of it. You get a feel for how it works and how sculpting works, and you'll start to visualize what your miniature is going to look like. Then after that, we're going to go to a product called Super Sculpt Firm. That's a really good, nice product, and you can get some really good detail out of it. And then we're going to make a yet smaller version that's almost the size of our eventual product. But this won't give you the detail that we want to get in these kinds of models. But this is getting us closer, and it's also going to give you a good feel for how to sculpture something like this better. And then finally, the final step, when we actually make the fantasy miniature that we want to make, after we've had some practice, we've done our drawings, we've done a few different levels, a few different sizes, we're going to go to the final size and the final product, and that's a product called Procreate. It's a two-part epoxy putty. It's a professional sculptor's putty, and what you do is you tear off pieces of it and you mix it together, and then you have a certain amount of time before it dries, so you have a certain amount of working time with it. So that's another reason why you need to get some practice sculpting first, because once you get down to the final product, you only have a certain amount of working time. You can work on it afterwards, but you have a working time that's important. So before I start describing the process and where we begin, the final part of this portion of the tutorial, part one, I'm going to show you some of the tools that I use. So, of course, we have a sketch pad, some pencils. I have a nice vise here. If you have a nice little vise like that, that'll really come in handy. Pin vices work well too, if you know what that is. It's kind of like a little tiny vise. A cork. A lot of people use cork when they're making miniatures. It's optional, and I'll show you why we do that. Of a whole variety of small tools that you can use. X-Acto knife, very pointy little tools with very sharp points on them. A variety of different. I like these little screwdrivers with the little flat edges on them. And I made this tool here. This is one of my favorites. I don't know if you can see that, but what I did was I bored a hole in the end of the stick and then put a pin in it. So this gets me very fine detail work, that pin there, if you can see that. So you should make yourself a few of those, because once you start working on that detail, you're going to need a pin to get the real serious detail. So make yourself several of those. Of course, brushes and whatnot. That's not just for painting. We're going to use those brushes for other things too along the way. Some little hand tools. Self-explanatory. A magnifying glass as a minimum. When you start working on that small one, you're going to need a magnifying glass to get a really good look at the detail. Optimally, you'd have something like this, which I really like. I use this. This is nice. This is a desk magnifying lamp, and it's got lights in it and a nice big area for looking through, so I can work on that. So if you have one of those, that's great. If you want to order one, that'd be terrific. If you plan on making, you know, fantasy miniatures and putting some time into it, this is well worth the money. There's all different types. There's round ones and there's different price ranges. But if you can spring for it, I'd get that. It comes in use for a lot of things other than just miniatures. And some wire. This is important. This is going to be the armature inside your miniature. It'll maintain the strength, and I will show you that. And there's a bunch of different types of wire you can use. I'll show you how to do that. That's all in the tutorial. So after that, it's the clay, children's clay, Super Sculpey, and then the Procreate. And all of these things are on my website where you can learn more about them, and you can order them if you want. And I will be posting, as I create new videos in this tutorial, I will also be adding to that tutorial, that web-based tutorial, on my webpage, so you can follow along with that for more instructions and help and tips, and you can see how it progresses. So this is the end of part one of the sculpting fantasy miniatures. And I realize you're probably enthusiastic, you want to get to it, but the right way to do it is to learn how to do it in a progress, so they come out really good, and we'll get through it. So if you're not a subscriber, I suggest you might want to subscribe to my channel, and that way you can keep updated as the next part 2 comes out. So thank you for watching. The URL of my website is www.stormthecastle.com.